I knew it wasn't right. And so did the community. The community of people were getting loud.
All right, welcome to Shot Callers. I am here with Jackie. She is with HTXKidsFirst, and she's based out of Houston. I brought her on today to talk about something that recently happened in Houston ISD that she sort of blew the whistle on. Texans for Vaccine Choice didn't really go public with this information simply because it didn't really fit into our wheelhouse, but I think that it's important for people to understand what's going on locally and what could happen in their own school district with their own health department. So welcome, Jackie. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, how you came to have this information, and what exactly happened.
Sure. So I started HTXKidsFirst 3 years ago during the whole mask COVID debacle, okay? And a bunch of us parents went out to the school board meetings. We voiced our opinions about the masking. I mean, we kind of ran with it like everyone else did at the time, right? And once that kind of subsided, once Texas finally said, okay, we're not going to do this anymore, I speak for me and many others in Houston that have decided to launch more exposures for other things that are going on. So I was originally called Unmask HISD. And I changed the name to Kids First because at the end of the day, this is all about the kids, and they're after our kids on so many levels. And it stems from exposures of what's going on in the classrooms, to politically, driven ideologies going on in the city of Houston and surrounding Harris County, to whatever else. And recently, a nurse from Houston ISD reached out to me, and I do have a lot of whistleblowers. So a lot of people feel confident to send me information, and I am one person I will never break. If you tell me do not expose my name, I will never do that. I want to keep that trust. And so a nurse reached out to me, and she was very concerned, and she said, hey, heads up, HISD is going to do a vaccination clinic in the beginning of November. And I said, okay, is this normal? Like, does this happen all the time? And she says, well, it does, but we're going to do it on a Saturday, 2 Saturdays, and they're asking over 200 of us nurses to come in and vaccinate kids, which most of us have never done before, and not get paid for it either. So going in on their off time to do something they've never done before and try to get these delinquent students who aren't up to date on their vaccines to go to this clinic. And so it's a parent-driven initiative, right? I mean, they're not going to drag the students there. So that's okay, fine, whatever. At the same time, do you remember, Michelle, like a time when you were a kid of having vaccine clinics from your school? Because I don't. Like, I remember none of that.
Yeah, they're kind of common. Typically, it's like a mobile vaccination unit that comes to the school, and the kid gets sent home. It kind of falls along with like the flu season, so it's usually a flu shot clinic, not getting you up to date on everything. But it's a third-party organization that contracts with the school, and the kid gets a consent form that they are supposed to have in order to get vaccinated. But this is sort of new that they're asking these school nurses who have a very limited scope of practice to not only come in on their day off, but to administer these vaccines, and not a third party, like, trained nurse.
Correct. Yeah. So they partnered with the Houston Health Department to do this. And that's where I felt, okay, this has got to go out. And I asked her for permission. I said, can I share this? Because something doesn't seem right here. And sure enough, she's like, absolutely. And sure enough, I knew it wasn't right. And so did the community. The community of people were getting loud. And people were defending, even the teachers union, which I'm not a fan of the teachers unions, I'm going to be honest with you. But the teachers union was backing these nurses and was really fighting for them either to get paid to go or don't go at all. Right. And we will help protect your job. So the superintendent gets involved. The new superintendent, which if you're not aware, or maybe your listeners aren't aware, the state took over Houston ISD because it's kind of a disaster. And not kind of, it is a disaster. And it's very interesting how this whole process is unfolding. I'm not sure whether he's a good fit or bad fit. It's been really hard for me to put my finger on it from the way I'm looking at the way he's handling things. You know, I can see that the unions and a lot of the left-leaning folks are very hateful of him, which makes me wonder, okay, are we all in agreement on this, or are y'all really crazy and he might be okay? So I haven't quite figured that out. But regardless, he was then coming in through emails saying that they had no choice, they had to go to this, and many teachers put themselves out there to do extra things, and so they should be doing this too. And even though nurses are a little bit different than the teaching staff, let's be honest, right? And so she was concerned. She got another email from the director from HISD nursing, and then it included a whole laundry list of training that they had to take. And a lot of this training was based from the CDC. And so I went online to go look for it. Okay. And so I don't know if it's everything that's available to the public. Maybe there's another portal that has different training. But from what I found, it was just these online modules of how to vaccinate kids. And I'm thinking, this doesn't seem right. Like, if I'm going to take my child to get a vaccination, I would hope that person has been properly trained in the medical profession to do something like this, and not just go through some CDC online training that anybody can go do. Like, that just doesn't seem or jive right with me.
And I imagine that online module had very limited information about reactions and what to look for and how long to wait. 'Cause I remember when Walgreens was rolling out the huge COVID vaccine push, and they had to create extra room in their clinic area or their pharmaceutical area for people to sit there for 15 to 20 minutes before they were allowed to leave. That was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. But I'm imagining that, you know, this is more of like a stab and go kind of initiative where it's just give them what they want or need and then send them on their way.
Yeah, I mean, in the list of vaccines, it was all of them, plus COVID and flu. Okay, so
neither of which are, you know, recommended or required for public school.
And so I also shared on my posts about, you know, make sure you all understand there is a exemption form to fill out. And so the community started sharing that a lot. And the good thing that came out of this was the district backtracked and said, okay, there is an exemption form because enough people made a big deal about it. So I don't know how many people filled it out, right? So that's news that's not privy to me. But regardless, the point is that they communicated that there is an exemption form, which is good because, you know, I think there's so many parents who have no idea about this. And I mean, I didn't know about it until about 3 years ago. I had no idea. And the guilt I feel for even vaccinating my kid to what he's already got now. I mean, he's 11. So he had ear infections from the moment he was 3 months old until about 6 or 7, almost every month. And I know from just the guilt inside of me is telling me it's all these vaccines that we gave him. I mean, at the time they pressure you, right?
Right.
So I really regret not knowing about this, but it's not, I mean, again, parents, everyone, it's not your fault. Some of these things were hidden, and now we know. And so I think it's great that the district did communicate that, though. But there were still people who did attend. And, you know, I know of a case where there was a child who was vaccinated, even though the record stated he was up to date. Or he or she, I don't know what child it was, but
do we know if that child had received a letter to attend based on delinquency, or if they just kind of showed up? Don't know.
I believe the family showed up wanting either a COVID or a flu vaccination. It was not read properly, these records, and then received all of the ones the child had already received.
Wow.
Could you imagine taking your child to a place, they misread the information, and then they get every single thing that they already had before? I mean, what does your body do to that? I don't know the implications of that. I'm not a doctor, but
I mean, that's something that had to have been foreseen to some extent, because you're asking these nurses who have little to no training in medical records, in vaccinations, in what they do have to know which immunizations are quote unquote required, but it's not like they have a lot of real world experience in going through those medical records and then actually executing or administering these vaccines. So this is something that one would have expected there to be mistakes, and this is just kind of a very tragic one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many other kids maybe have been affected by this. You know, it's just alarming to me, and I really do believe that there just needs to be more communication to our communities to explain what's going on with this whole process. And I don't know how familiar you are with the CDC, the whole child, whole community initiative. Okay. And so
do any of the HISD schools have the clinics inside?
I am not aware of any right now, but that doesn't mean that there aren't.
Right.
They're very, especially now that the state's taken over. I will say this. I have tried to do a public information request on something very simple, and they wouldn't give me the answer to it. Yet I'm still seeing it being delivered to local news stations. And I'm sitting here wondering, okay, so if I ask for something to that magnitude, are you involved in the whole child, the whole community CDC program? I know if they can't give me the simple answer that I was asking for now, which is blowing my mind because I never had a problem with this before until the state took over.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So I am kind of concerned what's going on here because I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns with this district, and it's Houston. I mean, come on. We all know Houston has its own issues.
Yeah. We're in the heart of like the medical center. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in that area to prop up the medical mafia, the big pharma. But some of the things,
Dr. Hosey is a big voice in this community that a lot of people trust, sadly.
Yeah. Well, some of the things, we got a few people that sent us your post, and wanted to get more information, and they were really kind of taken aback by the fact that the Houston Health Department was so heavily involved in this initiative. And this is actually something that I had learned only recently, that each local health department has its own MTRAC coordinator, or I don't know about each local health department, but many have their own MTRAC coordinator. So MTRAC is the state's immunization registry. It is opt-in. So typically when a baby is born, they give you you get a stack of different forms to fill out. And that's one of them where you are consenting to add your child to the state's immunization registry. And every time your child gets an immunization, it is supposedly added to the database. It's not a foolproof system by any means. But children aged 1 through 18 can be opted into the system by their parents. Well, the local health department's MTRAC coordinator communicates with school districts and private schools to audit their records and to know which kids are not up to date. So it was not a huge surprise to me, having learned this about a year ago, but there are a lot of people that don't understand that your child's immunization records are not just open to the eyes of the state and the district itself, but also your local health department, who can then, use that information to, as we saw in this case, offer catch up. But the system is so multi-layered in Texas, which is shocking to a lot of people because we're such a, we love liberty here, right, in Texas. Mm-hmm. But we have this immunization registry. It is often incomplete. It's very difficult to opt out of it once you're in, but it's used in such a way that in ways that people would not expect. So I encourage everybody to get in touch with the state and see if your child is registered with MTRAC. And if you're not comfortable with that, to try to withdraw them from the system. That way, this kind of information is not being so easily shared between entities, and your information is not just out there for everybody to see. But another thing that, like I touched on before, like these vaccination clinics are not super uncommon, but the fact that it was so coordinated between two government entities, and it's not something that you can just, like, if you want it, come and get it. It was targeted towards specific children. And we have this issue every single back to school season where school districts or individual campuses are putting out information about, get up to date, or, no shots, no school, but they're not giving the information about exemptions. Mm-hmm. One red flag that came up for me with this entire situation was, who's considered delinquent? Is it a kid that has an exemption for specific vaccines, but they're still considered delinquent? I mean, the definition was never really put out there for everybody to understand. Did you get insight on that?
No, I don't, but they sent out several emails to parents weeks leading up to it. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, she has 2 children in the district, and so she receives all the emails. And so she was telling us, she says, hey, they're sending out these emails, before the nurse even came to me. And I said, okay, so they're just reminding people to get their kids vaccinated? Like, what's the deal? And it was just almost every week. And she says, this is crazy. It's nonstop, just reminding to get their kids vaccinated. Then I think that's when that last email came out, is when they mentioned the exemption form because of the backlash.
Yeah.
So, but it was a long time that they kept pumping these emails out. And remember, HISD has about 190,000 students.
It's huge.
Yeah. And so, according to the nurse, though, she says that there were only 200 delinquent, which is not a significant number by any means. But why would they hold a clinic at 2 high schools for just 200 kids?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, because it's taxpayer funded, right, through, setting this up and whatever else they're doing there. I didn't go. I should have gone to just be a little spy, but I didn't. And, but I'm curious, like, one, how many people attended? I guess I could do an information request and see if
that was going to be my follow-up question, is whether or not anybody's done a PIR to see the amount of funds that were used, either with HISD or the health department, or both. Right. But one thing that just came to mind was there was legislation passed. I think it was in the budget in the House or in the legislature this year, that said that local health departments can no longer use funds to promote the COVID vaccine on its own. So this may be kind of their way of like wholesale getting people vaccinated against COVID, because they're offering it alongside all of these other ones. So that's another angle that makes this even more interesting. And
that's interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me because, I mean, it's been a constant push to still get this thing, right? And so it doesn't stop. And it's not the Houston Health Department, it's Harris County Health. They're just as bad. I follow them on both Instagram and Twitter, and it's every day they are just blasting out, get your COVID vax, get your flu vax, get your boosters, spike vax, whatever these things are called, and it's like there's billboards all over the city for it too. I'm like, they just won't stop. It's nonstop. I can't believe the people who are still going to get these things, but.
Well, and they're having, CDC is concerned because only 14% of eligible Americans have opted to get this new annual COVID vaccine. They're promoting the triple shot, so COVID, flu, and RSV. But the uptake has been so low, which, finally, but this is a way that we're seeing that they're going to try to increase compliance. I mean, like I said, COVID is not required for any public school enrollment. Neither is flu, neither is RSV at this point. There's, a limited number of vaccinations that are required, although you can exempt yourself out for almost any reason. But I think we're going to increasingly see these kind of end round ways to increase compliance with COVID now that we have effectively banned any COVID mandate in the state of Texas, which is great. It's a success, but it's like they're still going to find ways to compel and coerce people into doing it.
Oh yeah, I saw. Have you talked to Dr. Bowden?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Dr. Bowden posted today, which was great, that how Methodist had to, and if you and your listeners, obviously, I know you're aware, but Methodist Hospital, being in Houston, was one of the biggest pushing hospitals in this city to make sure that their staff was vaccinated. Otherwise, you couldn't work there anymore. And that's what happened to Dr. Bowden. Well, anyway, she posted today on Twitter, and it was great. She's like, well, looks like they're backtracking now because they can't, based on what just passed, they can't force their employees to be vaccinated anymore per COVID. So, which is great. Thank God this is happening. But, at the same time, think of all these people who ended up taking it because they were so afraid of losing their job.
Right.
The situation is, it's great where we're at now, but all these people, I do feel a little bit of, sadness for them because, at the same time, not all of us are strong-minded. Okay. And some of these people really were, scared. And at this point, I think it's great where we're at, but geez.
And there's admittedly a lot of work to be done, not just in the area of COVID, but
every vaccine.
Right. And something that Texans for Vaccine Choice has been working on, and it's a slow battle, it's a slow fight, but trying to get these vaccine clinics outside of school hours. So great, it was on an off day, but you're using your taxpayer money, your public school funds, we're underfunding education, but you're using your public school funds to push these vaccinations. We want to try to separate the school districts from the health aspect, the physical health aspect. And I think that's going to be even harder as the years go by, because we're, like you said, we're starting to tiptoe towards these whole community schools where you can get every manner of medical care inside the school building or inside the district, at least, to make it, easier for people to access, but it's also easier to, violate the tenets of informed consent. So it's a huge concern for us and has been for a very long time. But again, it's not the easiest battle to fight.
So I want to make sure I'm quoting this correctly, but I do know. So when I was speaking with my whistleblower, she did make a comment saying, there was no consent form required for this specific off-campus clinic because parents have to go there anyway and bring their child. So that the parent or guardian is taking their kid. Okay, which guardian? Hello. This also, it's another thing for me. It's like, okay, obviously not every child has their, biological parent or whatever, but there was no consent form for this specific event. But she did mention something that alarmed me a little bit, saying that they do have to have consent forms if it's done in school. And I thought to myself, wait a second. I'm like, wait a second. There should be none of this happening. She's never done that. She's never been a nurse who has ever provided a vaccination in school or ever. Like I said, she was uncomfortable with even doing this. This is not something she wanted to be a part of. I need to find the exact language, and I'll have to follow up with you on that.
Yeah.
But, I was a little bit red flagged on that one because I thought, wait a second, are they vaccinating in the school? Like, is this happening? And if there are consent forms, because and maybe you know this, Michelle, are they doing flu shots inside school or is it outside school?
It's typically, sometimes it's in the school, but it's a third party clinic. That's been my experience in Round Rock ISD, is that when they have had it, and it's been several years, but when they've had it, it's been a third party provider, either in a mobile unit or like there's a specific area in the cafeteria that they cordon off. The gray area here with consent is, in these situations, who is matching the signature on the consent form or the name on the consent form with the name on the child's records as the custodial parent in situations where you've got custody orders, like who is confirming that this parent can alone make that decision, because most of this is 50-50 in standard divorce cases. So in my case, my personal case, I have 100% decision-making authority for vaccination. So if my kid's father took them to get vaccinated, that would be a violation of a court order. So there's so much gray area that is typically not addressed. And I'm betting, like, I would 100% put money on the fact that these nurses are not being trained in that area to look out for this, whether it's a grandparent bringing a child. And we have heard too many stories, nightmare stories, about grandparents who don't agree with the parent's decision not to vaccinate, but the grandparents have the kid in their care, like on the weekends or whatever, because the parent works strange shifts. And who knows, like, it could be anybody taking this child in to get caught up.
Well, it's a good point, because in Houston ISD, we have a lot of, and it could be anywhere in Texas, really, but I know for sure in Houston ISD, there's a lot of refugee students, a lot. Okay. And, and I've noticed too that they always target the Hispanic communities. It makes me wonder, like, what are they saying? My husband speaks Spanish. I don't, but it makes me wonder how they are coercing these families to go out to these events too. Right. And I noticed this a lot during the time that we fought against the masks. And I spoke with a lot of Hispanic families, and many who were well informed and were like, we don't agree with it. We just can't make it to the school board because it conflicts with my work schedule and all this. And but we appreciate that you're speaking up. My child is totally, is so upset about this. I spoke with one dad. He would cry because he didn't like wearing the mask. But these families, these Hispanic families, would tell me that, they were always coerced into doing all these things. And I'm thinking, who's telling you this stuff? And so think about it with vaccines, right? And for these people that are coming over the border and they're coming into our schools, and these children, who are their guardians or who are their parents?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It breaks my heart because there's so many unknowns here, and the validation of it all, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
well, I really appreciate you speaking up about this, and telling us the story, and advocating for these nurses and the students in your district. So, I mean, I deeply, deeply appreciate it. And hopefully we get to follow up soon about if there's any remedy for that child that was over-vaccinated, or if HISD is planning any of these in the future, how much they spent. Would love to touch base with you soon about that if you do a PIR.
sure.
Tell us where we can find you on social media or elsewhere.
So I'm on Instagram at HTXKidsFirst, and Twitter, the same, HTXKidsFirst.
Okay. And you just launched a Moms for Liberty in Harris County, right?
Yes. So we are relaunched. We are the Moms for Liberty Harris County chapter. I'm the vice chair, and we have three others. Their other chairs are Chair Denise, and we are excited to get started here in Houston and Harris County. We desperately need it. Yeah. So we need more people to come out. Harris County is the largest county in Texas, as everyone's aware, and there's so much work to be done. I mean, we have two of the largest school districts in Harris County, Houston ISD and Cy-Fair ISD. So there's a lot to do. So if you're interested, please reach out to me, and I'd be happy to.
So they can just reach out to you through HTX Kids First to join or come to a meeting?
We also have a Moms for Liberty Facebook page, Harris County Facebook page. We're on Instagram, which is Moms for Liberty Harris. So okay. Moms for Liberty Harris. And then I can't remember what the Twitter handle is. We tried to keep them all the same, but you know how that worked. Yeah. So either way, you can find us on any of those, or even message me on HTX Kids First, and I'm happy to get you in the right direction. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Jackie. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.